The Atheist Debates Patreon Project presents a debate review of Evidence for God versus Howard Stirrup. Hey everybody, hope you're well. I know many of you are waiting on the debate reviews, part 2 and potentially 3 of my debate with Daniel Hakikachu. That is coming next month in November. There's a lot that's been going on, both with regard to debates. I did 2 debates in October. This is a review for one of them. I will do the other review in November as well. But also our reptile business is picking up, and we were doing additional work in that area. But I genuinely want to keep trying to take as many debates as I can. And one of the things that people often ask is, when you're getting ready to take a debate, what do you look for in an opponent? And my answer's been consistent, and I think now my answer is going to have to change a little bit. The consistent answer I've given is that I don't care who I'm debating. There's a couple of exceptions where I've debated someone and I won't debate them again. But generally speaking, I prepare for the topic. I don't prepare for the person. So I don't go look them up. I don't go find out what their standard arguments are. I don't know what they sound like. Sometimes I don't even know what they look like apart from a thumbnail that's been put up. And I like that because, as I mentioned many times before, I think many of my opponents have made a mistake by making the debate about me. I think it's a mistake to address the opponent. Oh, Matt's not a real skeptic. Matt doesn't have a foundation for his epistemology. Whatever when they make it about me, they lose already. And I'm not saying I look at debates as win-lose, because I don't, but you lose the script. You're no longer defending the proposition. You're making this about some sort of, Matt is the end boss of atheism that I must defeat. And I think that's a mistake. So I've avoided doing it. Now, let me tell you a little bit about what happened before the debate, then we'll get into what happened in the debate. And this is a debate that I quit after about an hour. I left. And I think that was absolutely the right decision, but I want to be able to explain why. So before the debate started, Modern Day Debates had contacted me to say, hey, there's this guy named Howard who wants to do a debate on evidence for God. And he's got 3 topics. The 3 topics being the earth is designed for life, evidence for Noah's Ark, and historical and actual evidence for the devil. And as soon as I heard that, I immediately responded to Modern Day Debates saying, hey, can we just do the 3rd one? We've done evidence for God over and over again. I don't really feel like debating Noah's Ark. I find it to be a silly topic. And, we could do just the design argument, but I really am interested in what's this evidence for the devil, because that doesn't happen very often. And this could be a great debate for, imagine your thumbnails being, is there a devil? Atheist versus Christian, whatever. I don't really tend to do things in terms of clickbait titles, but I thought that could be interesting. And what I heard back was, we're not sure we want to do that. And then 2 or 3 days before the debate, they reached out and said that Howard wanted to drop the devil thing entirely, which was the only thing that I really cared about that was novel or interesting. And I was like, well, he wants to create a new 3rd topic that is actually the same as the first topic. The first topic was Earth's design for life. And the 3rd one that he wanted to replace, he wanted to remove the devil one and replace it with the earth is positioned for life or something like that. And I was like, this is starting to be, I don't like the fact that somebody's going to change what they've said they were going to debate just a couple days beforehand. I mean, I did my prep work based on this. You're going to change it in just a couple days before the debate. And so they were like, okay, he's agreed he'll just do the same bits. Although, to be fair, when we get to the actual debate, he has, I find out just before the debate that he actually had like 10 things he wanted to do, but they got it to narrow it down to 3. And I was like, these are all red flags. I don't know this person, but when you say that you have an argument for the evidence for God, and it's in 10 different arguments, you fundamentally don't know how debates work. There's just not time to address that. It took 3 hours for Daniel and I to cover 3 topics, and one of them was just boring and simple. It's a big red flag to me when somebody clearly does not know or understand enough about debate that they want to show up with 10 dissertations on subjects. But I said, I agreed to do this. I'll do it. And then people started coming up to me saying, holy cow, you're debating this guy? He's a flat earther, right? And I'm like, well, I don't really care that much if he's a flat earther. That's not what the subject of the debate is. Although that's an interesting bit of information. And somebody else is like, oh, no, this guy's a tinfoil wackaloon. I can't believe you would even waste your time debating him. And I'm like, I don't vet my opponents for these things. I trust the audience to sort out who's being reasonable and who's not. And I trust myself to be able to find a way to make the debate productive. When I go into debates, by and large, it's about finding a way for me to teach the principles of skepticism, critical thinking, the nature of evidence, and to show why I'm not convinced of what somebody's advocating for, and why I think other people should also not be convinced. So we start the debate, and Howard begins with a video recorded presentation that mostly focused on design. There were only like a couple minutes on Noah's Ark near the end and a couple minutes or even less than that on the devil near the end. But most of it focused on design. And if you go watch the debate, he does the first 13 minutes or so. And it's a video presentation where he spends a good deal of time talking about pi and phi and the golden ratio and various mathematical patterns. But he has a diagram. It looks like a card table that has been painted with a diagram where he can put additional wheels on it to turn them 180 degrees or 90 degrees counterclockwise, and this lines up with this, and then you get these zeros at cardinal locations with repeating numbers off them. The Bible talks about, there's verses about 7 dimensions, and we're going to square a circle and a golden spiral, and here's the first 100 numbers of phi and the digital roots of phi, and we'll have this number mod this number to start to, and you can draw it like an astrology sign or a sine wave, and how this relates to there being 12 cranial nerves, and this demonstrates the 6 days of creation. And at some point in it, he laughs and says, now, that's a whole lot of coincidences if you like to believe that. Because phi works in perfect harmony with pi by design and not chance is his conclusion, I think. It's hard to tell where the conclusion is to his argument for design. So even if we took that at face value, his assertion that phi works in perfect harmony with pi is by design and not chance is something he never, ever, ever attempted to demonstrate. He just doesn't believe that it's chance. He doesn't believe that it's coincidence. He doesn't believe that this pattern that he's seeing could come about either through the ordinary mechanisms of a decimal-based number system, which, by the way, you have to be using for these values of pi and phi if you were to use some other base. And what's to stop you from using a base? Why don't you convert it all into base 6, base 13, base 7? Pick some other magical numbers out of the Bible, 6, 7, 12. Put them in all those different bases and see what you get then. But at the end of the day, it's just an assertion that whatever harmony he thinks he's found must be by design and not by chance. And I'm sitting there listening to his opening, trying to find a way to make this useful. I'd already written my opening on good evidence for God and the basics of what I wanted to talk about on the 3 topics to make sure that we were able to actually address it and have a good debate. I was trying to figure out what questions to ask to expose potential issues in his whatever it was that he was presenting. But from there, he went on to talk about how there's no movement of the earth, which is the beginning of his globe skeptic flat earth stuff that he wasn't supposed to bring up or address. And And I made notes of, I wanted to ask how he explains satellites and gravity and how how the Earth would be different potentially from other stellar bodies given the physics involved in this. But when he says that, all primary observations don't show a loss of landscape or curvature, that's his argument for the flat Earth, that there's no detectable movement, that he's got evidence that discredits evolution, but he doesn't present any evidence that discredits evolution. And he just thinks that everything he's presented discredits evolution. The numbers of pi and phi and what he thinks he sees or doesn't see in the landscape curvature of a potential flat Earth, all of this he thinks is evidence that discredits evolution. Therefore, the more likely scenario is that the Earth was designed. Now, this is where he adds in that stones might have been alive at some point, and talks about how we keep finding stones that are heart-shaped, including some evidently heart-shaped structures or hollowed back, and all of this. This is his evidence for Noah's Ark. Now, to be fair, no evidence was presented for the existence of Noah's Ark. All he presented is, here are stones that are shaped like hearts. His position is that these were actual hearts of creatures that died during the global flood. And so because he sees stones that looks like hearts, that leads to they were hearts, which leads to they were the hearts of creatures killed during the global flood, which leads to therefore there was a global flood, which leads to therefore there was a Noah's Ark. And this is how he says that he's presenting evidence for Noah's Ark. This is a pattern-seeking mind that starts at point A and moves all the way to point Z and then off the alphabet entirely, claiming that the existence of this thing, which he hasn't demonstrated is actually a heart, leads to a parade of evidence that he's going to count as evidence for Noah's Ark. When somebody comes to me and says, hey, I want to defend the notion that we have evidence for Noah's Ark, I'm sorry, but I'm going to think of things in a more normative sense, where people think they've found a structure on Mount Ararat that they think fits the description of Noah's Ark, or maybe they've found physical evidence of beams of gopher wood or whatever. That's what I'm going to prepare for. There's no way to prepare for someone to say, I found this rock, which looks like this, which means it's this, which means it's that, which means it's that, which means I have evidence of Noah's Ark. That's not even in the ballpark of the way evidence works. That's not how reality works. That when we talk about a chain of evidence, there's a necessary link to each step, and those steps, those links are completely fabricated. His last minute or so on the devil kept talking about how the number 666 keeps appearing in globe math, and how the ancients worshipped dragons, and there's a constellation called Draco, which is a dragon in the sky. This is his evidence for the devil. Evidence is the facts that support a proposition to explain some observation or state of affairs. Constellations don't exist. Constellations are us playing connect the dots with stars. There's no intended constellation there. They're only visible from our privileged position in the first place, and it is a projection of our mental fantasies to, oh, look, those stars there, they look a little bit like a bear or a cup or a dragon. And then we explain those things, and they're very useful for identifying the stars for celestial navigation and things like that. But when your case for the devil is there's a constellation called Draco, and other like half-finished, half-formed thoughts that he's speaking over the top of this timed video. And at one point, he gets ahead of the video, and despite the fact that there's a massive wall of text on the screen for him to potentially find out what he missed or what he skipped, he's just like, well, I guess I got that one done early, and sits there quietly until the video goes on to the next one. While he's doing all that, I'm trying to find a way to ask the questions, to get to the key, to expose what I don't agree with. And for me, it was about, I wanted to address potential errors to watch out for when we have a, like a small sample size, or when somebody claims they've found supposed problems with evolution. But all he did was say that he had debunked evolution and left it at that. When you don't grasp or understand reality, when you are not connected to reality in the same way as your interlocutor, it's going to be difficult, if not impossible, to have any sort of discussion. And as it turns out, after I left, not only did he evidently claim victory, but he flatly said that he didn't care about the debate. He only wanted to present his thoughts on a platform. So basically what happened was we platformed him. We gave him a bigger audience than he's ever had, than he'll ever have, to present just absolute nonsense. Now, near the end of the debate, or at the end of the debate when I left, I said something that I shouldn't have said, and I'm going to get back to that. But when I talk about, hey, here's all these things about pi and about phi, and here's rocks that are like a heart, which means they are a heart, which means there was a flood, which means there was Noah's Ark. So they, it is what he sees and interprets this rock to be is now evidence for Noah's Ark in his head. I was reminded immediately of a 1998 film, actually Darren Aronofsky's debut film called Pi. Interesting facts about this film. It was had an initial budget of $60,000, and he actually took out $100 donations from his family, where he promised them $150 back if it made money. He premiered Pi at the Sundance Film Festival, where he won Best Director. The film itself was nominated for a Special Jury Award. This is from the Wikipedia entry on here. And then Artisan Entertainment bought the distribution rights for $1 million, and the film was released to the public and grossed $3.2 million. And Pi was also the first film to be made available for download on the internet. Fun facts from Wikipedia. But the important thing is what the film's about. If you haven't seen it, it's about someone who essentially becomes so obsessed with the mathematics of pi that it drives them mad. I made a mistake at the end of this debate because I was sitting there and I was trying to find any way to salvage this. Let me ask the questions. Let me ask, he tried to say that I wasn't a real skeptic, and I was like, look, let's not make this about me. And he even kind of tried to get him to bring it on at one point, because if you're going to make the debate about me, it's over, because I'm not the subject, as I mentioned earlier. But it was clear that it was time to end it. It was clear that there was no debate here, that you had someone who, for whatever reason, has a completely skewed perception of reality when it comes to specifically the nature of evidence, but perhaps even more strongly, even more about reality, that we're not on the same page. It was also clear that Howard hadn't kept his word, that instead of defending and being willing to defend the three claims that he did, or that he had said he was going to defend, he was working in flat earth stuff and other conspiracy theories. Towards the end, in a short, probably 5 to 10 minute period, he mentioned reptilian beings from a higher dimension, Dracula and the descendants of Dracula, Freemasons, secret societies, the Order of the Dragon, New World Order, higher dimensional beings, and how the United Nations, something about United Nations artificial weapon modification, and they have a snake in their logo. I was trying to take notes as quickly as I could, and it was just too much. And when you look at, if you go back and watch the slides that he puts up there, there's like 5 times the text on the slide than what he ever actually reads. And if you go in and, I mean, it would be an exercise to go through line by line and see what can you make sense of. But he wasn't interested in a debate. He just wanted to present his ideas. And the one thing that I did that I wish I hadn't done was at the end of the debate, told him, you need help. And that reads as if I'm making a statement about his mental health. I'm not qualified to diagnose, but it's something we all do. And in the heat of the moment, I was sitting there going, wow, I don't like to use ableist language like crazy or mental or, whatever. But I'm sitting here with someone whose view of reality isn't recognizable. And after he did not keep his promise about what he was going to defend, and when it became clear that there was no way to move forward, and it also became clear that all that was going to happen was for people were just going to mock him. And while I have no problem at all calling delusions delusion, pointing out absurdities, I don't want to potentially platform someone with some sort of, and I'm just saying there's a possibility, some sort of mental defect that sets them up for just mockery. You're not deserving of mockery because your brain works differently or does not work normatively. Mockery comes from when you're ostensibly normative and you still buy into stuff out of, fear or whatever else. And even then it's not about mocking people. It should be about mocking the ideas. For example, Dawkins wrote The God Delusion, and it's not just about Christians. It's probably primarily focused on Christianity. And so he's basically saying that Christians have a God delusion. And when you ask, there are Christians who believe in demons and devils and spirits and things like that, but it doesn't keep them from living a relatively typical life where their day-to-day operations and how they view the world are not impacted greatly by the fact that they also believe in a spirit realm. And part of that's because typically they just rationalize it away as in, there's no way to prove this. I take it on faith, or it's a personal experience. I can't demonstrate to anybody. All of those things. Those are incredibly weak delusions. Then there are the strong delusions that come along with hallucinations and various mental disorders that make it so that somebody can't even function in society. And then there are things in the middle where the conspiracy theorist mind is missing a component about how to evaluate evidence and how to connect the dots. And instead, they connect the dots in wild ways. That's where we're at here. In the future, I'll be doing a better job of vetting my opponents. You can't say I won't take anybody who's not attached to reality, because who is? Point to anybody I've debated on any subject, hell, including me, that has a completely correct model of reality. So you've got to draw some line about how far from reality their positions can be. And not just the positions themselves, like, I think there are demons, but the methodology that they've used to reach the conclusion that there are demons. If you think you've found evidence of Noah's Ark because there are rocks that are shaped like hearts, and that reminds you of hearts, and you think that they're petrified hearts, even though that's not how petrification works, and you think that those petrified hearts are therefore evidence of a global flood where everything died, rather than any number of other potential explanations, and you think that the evidence for this flood also then confirms a particular story about this flood rather than countless other stories about countless other floods, to the point where you can actually say that you've presented evidence for Noah's Ark by pointing to rocks that look like hearts. That's definitely too far divorced from the reality of epistemology. I have Christian friends who believe all kinds of stuff that I think is absolutely bizarre, that they can't demonstrate. They change their standards of evidence as it's convenient for the things that are part of their religion. In Howard's case, he might actually have fairly consistent standards of evidence when it comes to the things he believes, and yet he definitely doesn't have consistent standards of evidence for the things he doesn't accept. He wants to say that I take it on faith that I live on a globe or an oblate spheroid, that I take it on faith that evolution happened, and that the theory of evolution by means of natural selection is the current best model to explain the diversity of life. Because I follow the evidence and try to have good evidentiary standards. Standards that don't say, hey, I found something, it looks like this, therefore it's this, which means that, which means that, which means there's evidence for whatever it was I was trying to prove in the first place. So, my apologies to Howard for telling him you need help. That's not my place to say that or make that decision. It's not my job to diagnose people. It's a spur-of-the-moment conclusion based on recognizing that Howard and I, while we share a reality, we don't share anything approaching an understanding of that reality in any useful way to have a conversation. The other part of the apology is that, and I know this is what he wanted, and he's going to be happy for the debate to stay up and for him to take all kinds of heat. But I worry when we start having debates that are so bizarre that I don't know what can come of them other than just mocking the individual. So I'm going to be making some changes when people ask me, what am I looking for in a debate? I haven't worked out exactly what to say, but I won't be saying that the opponent doesn't matter. The topic definitely matters, but when you have an opponent who can't or won't address the topic in a meaningful way to allow for debate, that matters. And surely I can't know everything about everybody, but in the future, I will at least try to make sure that I'm not helping someone gain, I guess, attention, an audience that is an order of magnitude or two greater than their ability to defend their ideas is deserving of. It's incredibly difficult. It's no fun to make a video like this. I was genuinely looking forward to see what kind of evidence we could get for the devil. And was there anything at all that was going to confirm the existence of Noah's Ark? And instead, it was videos about math and pi and phi. And here's the first 100 digits. And if you put them on this thing, you'll see this. And then you rotate this 90 degrees counterclockwise, and this one 180 degrees, and this one. And all of this proves that it can't be a coincidence. That's not how you prove that something isn't a coincidence. And even if it couldn't be a coincidence, that doesn't mean that it was designed, and it certainly doesn't mean it was designed by a god. And the Earth still is an oblate spheroid. It's one of the most difficult things I've ever had to do, is to try to get out the last couple sentences of me just saying, this debate should not have happened. This person should not be given an audience. These ideas, there's not enough tinfoil in the world to make a hat that would protect any of us from what this individual is talking about. And I don't say that just to be mean. He showed clips from Simon Dan, who I've done a podcast with in the past, and Simon Dan has the Tinfoil Tuesday thing where he goes through a lot of this stuff, and I'm sure he's dealt with Howard many times before. I'm sure Dan will have thoughts about this and be like, yeah, this is why I don't spend time actually debating, and I spend all my time, or more of my time, debunking than doing this. But it did teach me something. Hopefully it taught other people something. And hopefully we won't have to see something like that again. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time. Bye-bye.